allocate, 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 variety,
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 acquisitions, 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 acquiring and acquisitions, yeah. 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 Acquiring and acquisitions, yeah.
and
Competitiveness,
competitiveness, 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 and
competitiveness,
competitiveness,
strategic partnerships, 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 relinquish, 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 inevitably, 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 strategically, 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 philanthropy, 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 equity financing, 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 equity, 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 leveraged buyouts, 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 subsidies, 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 subsidies.
Okay.
Specific purposes.
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 Okay.
Specific purposes. Retained, 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 dividend, 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 stereotypes, 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 stereotypes,
Stereotypes. 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 Stereotypes.
marginalized, 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 marginalized,
Marginalized. 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 Marginalized.
marginalized, 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 marginalized,
Within.
individuality,
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 Individuality. 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 Individuality.
Capital operations refers to the activities and strategies used to manage, allocate, and utilize capital in order to achieve various financial and business goals, such as increasing value, optimizing capital structure, or expanding business opportunities. The process can involve a variety of methods, including investments, mergers, and acquisitions, M&A, financing, equity transactions, and asset restructuring, asset restructuring.
Okay. Okay.
Some common, yeah?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, please. Yes. Okay.
Some common methods of capital operations include mergers and acquisitions, M&A, This involves acquiring, merging, or restructuring assets to integrate resources, improve market competitiveness, and enhance overall value. Financing. Companies raise capital through equity financing, debt financing, or other financial instruments to fund business expansion, R&D, or debt repayment. Equity investment. Investing in other companies' equity or capital injections to gain potential returns from ownership or strategic partnerships. Capital market activities. These include issuing, trading, or increasing stocks, bonds, and other securities to raise funds or increase a company's market value. Asset management and optimization. Effectively managing and optimizing assets to improve the return on capital and overall operational efficiency. The ultimate goal of capital operations is typically to enhance the value of a company, improve its competitive position in the market, and maximize the return on invested capital. Incumbent beneficiaries will never willingly relinquish their interests. However, due to their complacency and lack of foresight, wealth inevitably flows out of their hands. Therefore, as the new generation, we must strategically and systematically seize wealth from these beneficiaries, following a clear plan and well-defined steps. 20% of the wealth was in the hands of 80% of the poor, while 80% of the wealth was controlled by 20% of the rich. This was data from 30 years ago. Although there are no clear statistics now, it has reportedly shifted to a 1% to 99% ratio. Therefore, a wealth redistribution is necessary, which will involve a major reshuffling process. After accumulating capital, engage in philanthropy to give back to society, and then continue acquiring businesses, developing them, taking them public, and accumulating even more capital. Repeat the cycle with further philanthropy and acquisitions, continuing this process endlessly. I heard a flock of sheep run by. The manager was pleased with the new team's assertive approach. Mum pulled out the large album of photographs for us to look at. A large swarm of bees stung nearby campers. Planned to ignite a large land grab. At eruption, it would mark off the time of major world events. A pride of lions consists of many lions. Wiped out by fire, dumb up your country. The troop of baboons attacks people who are too close. Wealth of information that's programmed into our consciousness, with hopes to break their past record on real estate takeover. Here are the types of capital operations in English. Equity financing, raising capital by selling shares of the company to investors. Debt financing, it is borrowing money through loans, bonds, or other debt instruments that must be repaid with interest. Venture capital investment from venture capitalists in exchange for equity, typically for startups or early stage companies. Private equity capital raised from private investors to invest in or acquire companies, often for restructuring or growth. Initial public offering, IPO, raising funds by listing the company on a stock exchange and selling shares to the public. Mergers and acquisitions, M&A, combining with or acquiring another company to grow assets, capabilities, or market share. Crowdfunding, raising small amounts of money from a large number of people, usually via online platforms. Angel investment, early stage investment from high net worth individuals in exchange for equity or convertible debt. Leveraged buyouts, LBOs, acquiring a company using borrowed money with the assets of the acquired company often used as collateral. Revenue-based financing, raising funds in exchange for a percentage of future revenues rather than equity or fixed repayments. Joint ventures and partnerships, pooling resources and capital with another entity to achieve mutual business goals. Asset-backed financing, raising funds by leveraging existing assets such as real estate or equipment as collateral. Convertible debt, loans that can be converted into equity at a later date under agreed conditions. Grants and subsidies, funds provided by governments or organizations that do not require repayment, often for specific purposes. Trade credit, financing from suppliers who allow deferred payment terms. Factoring and invoice financing, selling accounts receivable or using invoices as collateral for immediate cash. Corporate bonds, issuing bonds to investors as a way to raise debt capital. Retained earnings, reinvesting profits back into the business rather than distributing them as dividends. Each method of capital operation serves different purposes and is suited to various stages of business development or financial needs. Discrimination in all forms is a destructive and harmful behavior that affects individuals and communities. People discriminate for many reasons, including a lack of understanding or knowledge about different cultures and backgrounds. Some people may discriminate based on a person's origin, assuming that they are at risk or a threat. This type of thinking is not only offensive, but also unfounded and can lead to harmful stereotypes. Another reason people discriminate is because of tight-knit communities. People may feel that they need to protect their community by shunning those who are different. In reality, this type of behavior only serves to isolate and marginalize individuals and groups, rather than bringing people together. Discrimination also comes from giving people or groups a bad rap. A bad rap means a bad reputation. People may have heard negative things about a group of people and assume that they are the same. This crude way of thinking is not only offensive, but also ignores the diversity and individuality within any group of people. It is important to remember that everyone deserves to be treated with respect and dignity. To avoid being discriminatory or offensive, we should educate ourselves about different cultures and backgrounds. It's also important to challenge our own biases and assumptions, and to speak out against discrimination when we see it. We must strive to create a society that is inclusive and accepting of all people, regardless of their origin. By understanding and valuing diversity, we can build stronger and more united communities.